So we're going to start with the quinoa salad. So a few things about quinoa if you've never used it. Quinoa is a seed. So you may have heard things about like you can sprout quinoa. Basically what that means is you're putting it in hot water. It's sitting there and it'll actually start to, I'm not going to say grow, but it'll actually pop open. And that's kind of what sprouted quinoa means. Quinoa is actually coated naturally by, I don't know what it's called, saponin or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it. And it's actually something that is very difficult to digest. So what I suggest doing is, I don't care what kind of quinoa you have, even if it says it's triple washed, like I have this huge bag that I'll never ever probably go through. This is actually organic, it's supposed to be washed, blah, blah, blah. I have to fully wash it or I have a hard time handling quinoa. I will get stomach pains, etc. So I washed it overnight. I actually put it in very hot water. I dumped it, put more hot water, dumped it, put more hot water, and then I just let it sit. And it does sprout a little bit overnight. So just be aware if it looks a little different, that's totally okay. What you're actually gonna want it to look like, well, let it go overnight and then you're gonna actually cook it. So according to the instructions, you're gonna soak it overnight, you're gonna cook it, you're gonna bring 12 cups of water to a boil, you're gonna throw in your quinoa. When it's all done, you're gonna rinse it again in cold water because this is a salad, you want it to be chili. And it's going to look something like this, if you all can see that. There's different types of quinoa as well. This one is just like the white, I guess, quinoa, but you can get all sorts, red, black. There's other varieties out there. This is probably one of the most, I would say the most common. And then what you're gonna do is, like with any salad, you're gonna throw it in a big bowl. We're gonna add different things to it. And I did cut up some cucumber, which I'll throw into a different salad later today. Just to show you what size you should be cutting it up. Your basic, very small, maybe 1/4 of an inch or so of cucumber. And really the sky's the limit here. You don't have to just follow what I have on here. I have adding a red onion. That is obviously optional as well. I didn't add onion to mine, just because sometimes it's a little overpowering, especially in this, but just add a little bit. It does add a nice flavor. Large tomato, cored, seeded, just because you don't want all that moisture in there, and then just throw that in there. Personally, I have a ton of cherry tomatoes, yellow cherry tomatoes in my garden growing. So I use these, and then I just chop them up and throw them in the bowl, as well as parsley and mint. Now, some people may not love the idea of putting mint in their salads. If you don't want to, it's totally fine. I love mint in a lot of different recipes, and Greek, Mediterranean salads, Greek food, Mediterranean food, Middle Eastern food. So I wouldn't even put this much if you're kind of afraid of using mint. If you do have it, I have it growing in my garden, so it's easy, but you can actually get it at the store too in a small little amount. I think it's probably even less than this. So we just take a little bit like this, chop it up and throw it in your salad. It just adds a little bit of a refreshing, different flavor. And I don't think you'll even notice it. It's not gonna like taste like toothpaste or anything, so don't worry about that. Parsley, we wanna make sure that there are some greens in there. It does add a lot of flavor, so I wouldn't omit the parsley. You can, of course. You can add dried parsley if you don't have fresh, but it won't taste as good. I think having, really fresh herbs makes this type of salad refreshing and very tasty. We're also going to add feta cheese. So you can add whatever kind of cheese you want. I like feta. You can add goat cheese. Probably could even add blue cheese if you wanted to. Might taste a little weird with the mint, but heck, cooking's all about experimentation. So what you have at home, in your pantry, in your refrigerator, throw it in and give it a try. So I also have on here to make your own salad dressing. You don't have to do this. Just buy a bottle of light salad dressing if you want to, Italian or Greek or balsamic vinegar, anything like that works. The balsamic vinegar will give it a little bit more of a sweet flavor, so up to you if you want to do that or not. I just made my own. I have red wine vinegar, olive oil. I'm actually going to turn this into Italian dressing after. Probably add a little more red wine vinegar. Any spices that you want to put in there. I added lemon juice as according to the recipe, and then I added salt and pepper in there as well. So what you're going to do, throw it all in the bowl, add your dressing, and what you are going to have is a lovely quinoa salad. Extremely healthy, extremely high in fiber and protein, plus of course all of your wonderful little vegetables in there. The only fat that you're really adding to this would be your dairy, so you cheese, which of course is up to you if you want to add that, as well as obviously the olive oil. But we try to use all more healthy fats in this to make it a well-rounded side dish. Could be used as a meal as well. If you do want to use meat, add chicken. I mean, you can add chicken to this and have a heartier lunch or a heartier dinner. A couple other things on that. If you want to, like I said, it's really, I mean, you could add whatever you want to this. It's farmers market time, so if you see other vegetables that you want to experiment with, feel free and add them. You could add something like broccoli slaw to this. You could add coleslaw, cabbage, different things like that would be delicious. Of course, your peppers, any type of peppers, if you want to make it a little zingier, you could add maybe a poblano or a jalapeno or something like that. Totally fine. So anything on these recipes that you see that's highlighted as a hyperlink would be either to a help source to just explain things a little bit more, or also there are links to former recipes that I put together in the past from previous cooking shows, or just previous articles or recipes that I posted to the PVD Living site. So feel free when you're looking at your recipes online to click around, because there is other information available on there for you. You can also use this as kind of a dipper. So if you have endive, which it's called Belgian endive, and it looks like little lettuce leaves, sort of, or little harder style leaves, kind of in between a lettuce and maybe a cabbage. If you want to use those as little dippers, you can use that to pick up your quinoa salad and eat it that way to add a little bit more crunch. You can really use quinoa itself as a substitute for rice. So any dishes that you see out there that require you to use rice in it, you can use the same method. Again, please remember that you soak it beforehand, and then once it is soaked, treat it like it is rice. It has about the same cooking time, maybe a little bit quicker for quinoa, but your recipes should still pretty much stay the same, maybe a little less cooking time. Oh, I also make a really nice quinoa chili. So I did include a recipe here to a link on the internet that's similar to what I make. But as you know, I just throw things in and just make the chili. I don't really follow the recipe. It's kind of whatever I have on hand. But there is a recipe here if you do want to do that. I try to make all of these recipes sort of go together. So if you're buying specialty items like quinoa and some of the spices, let's see here. One of the recipe calls for chipotle peppers. I wanted to make sure that you had several recipes to use these items. So you're going to see that there's a lot of overlap on the vegetables and some of the other items here within your recipes. All right, next one is grilled portobello mushroom pizzas. Now, I think I've talked before about really you can make anything into a pizza. Zucchini, you can make eggplant. Lynn was telling me the other day that she made a great eggplant pizza. So really anything that's a little bit heartier that you can cut a little bit thicker, you can make into like this type of pizza. A little healthier, you don't have the carbs, you don't have the gluten if you need gluten-free, etc. So I was lazy. I did not get up this morning and start grilling. So I did clean the mushrooms ahead of time. I took out all of the ribs. I took out the actual core piece or the stem, and they look sad and flat, but I put them in my toaster oven with a little bit just of salt and pepper, a little bit of spray, or you could use olive oil, and I did cook those. I don't throw anything out, so I will take the stem, I'll cut the little end off of it if it looks a little icky, and then I will chop it up and I'll fry it up and I'll use it in another dish. I don't really waste, I try not to waste anything that I have on hand. And I garden, so I do a lot of taking everything that I have in the garden and I try and create something with it. So with these, really the sky's the limit. In this recipe, I tried to do something a little different than your traditional pizza. I mean, sure, you can just slap on some sauce, and there's a recipe in there for a very easy tomato based sauce using tomato paste. But I want to do something different. So today we are going to use pesto and go back to, I think, my first virtual cooking where I did homemade pesto. So I did this yesterday. So you're just going to put a little bit of pesto on the base of your mushrooms. And just to show you what I did with my extras, plus I had a portobello mushroom that broke, so I cut it up too. So there's my extras. I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm just going to put a little bit of pesto on it. And now from this point, you can top it with whatever you want. In this recipe, I am using tomatoes. I like to add a little bit of sweetness, plus the tomatoes gives it a little bit more of a kind of pizza feel. So I'm just going to put a few of those on there. Remember, tomatoes do have a lot of liquid in them, so you're going to have a little bit of wateriness in these, so it's not going to be like your traditional pizza, so just to be aware of that. Then we are just going to add a little bit of cheese to this. I like to use fresh mozzarella cheese, but I didn't have any on hand. So we're just going to use a little bit of shredded cheese, not a ton, just enough to give it a little bit of flavor and have everything stick on your pizza. And that pesto is going to give it a ton of flavor, so no need to add additional oregano or dried basil or anything like that. I have salt and pepper to taste, but honestly, I put all of that in the pesto, so I don't typically add additional salt and pepper unless when you're eating it, you want to add it, feel free to do that. So then I'm just going to take this and I'm going to throw it in the toaster oven, and then we will finish it off in just a bit. So hold on 1 second. All right. So just to go over some of my little notes here. Now, a lot of these notes are actually based on some of the toppings and things that I'd like to put on these pizzas. I actually do make these all the time. So you can add really anything. So you can add, if you want to add meat, you can add a little bit of prosciutto on the top. It'll actually crisp up a little bit when you throw it in the toaster oven, or if you grill it, or however you want to cook it. Again, you can top it with sauteed spinach, artichokes, make it like a pseudo spinach artichoke dip on the top. If you want to make it into a sandwich, oh my God, it's delicious. So feel free to do that. I have a portobello mushroom sandwich. Because I mentioned that it does have a lot of liquid in it, you may just want to make sure that you get some of that moisture off before you add it to your sandwich, or it'll get mushy. I also put on here that you can use all the specialty bread buns that are lower calorie, gluten-free. There's a recipe online that I posted to make cauliflower buns or cauliflower bread. So you can always try something like that. I've actually made cauliflower pizza using the portobello mushrooms as sort of my topping, not using sauce or anything like that, just using these items with a little bit of blue cheese. And when I'm done, when these are done, we're going to actually toss some arugula on top of it. And with arugula, I like to use a little bit of lemon juice and salt. Really, that's it. But occasionally, if I want to add a little more flavor, a few more calories, I add a lemon olive oil. And I believe I included links to all of these things in your recipe guide. So I get this from Amazon. I like it because it actually has the lemon peels inside of it at the bottom, and it's just really tasty. So I'll actually toss that with the arugula instead of the lemon juice. So that's an option as well.
I personally love the zucchini ideas because I was just given a big one and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with it besides grilling? Love the pizza idea. When you said that, I was like, oh, that's what I can do.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Kim, I'll give you a link to, do you have, I think I gave you access to our entire site. So if you go to PBD Nutrition, scroll down, I believe I posted something about that under maybe, I want to say it's appetizers. So there is like a little link and it does have the little zucchini pizzas listed on there. Okay. So when I want like a healthy appetizer, because I'm probably gonna have chicken wings with it, I'll make these little zucchini pizzas. I've done it a million times. Just make sure you cook it a little bit beforehand and then add your toppings and recook it. Because zucchini, you want it to be thicker, right? But you also don't want it to be mushy, but you want it to be cooked. You don't want it crunchy and gross and raw. So cook it a little bit beforehand and then add your toppings, put it back in for just maybe 5 minutes or so after. And then you'll have a nice little pizza. And they're really cute, especially if you got those big zucchinis because they've got really big seeds in them. Sometimes they're harder to eat.
Thanks for the tip. Can I ask a question though? Because you had mentioned about basil on the portobello. I'm not a portobello fan, but how do you think, because I'm not good at this, how do you think the pesto would be on the zucchini?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've done a lot of, definitely. So just put a little pesto at the bottom. Now, because it's going to be very herb forward, you may want to add a little bit of sweetness to it. So what I do with that recipe, I actually add a little prosciutto on top of it. It'll give you a little bit of the salty kind of umami flavor, I guess we'll say. And then use a balsamic glaze and just drizzle a little bit if you use the arugula. Pesto and basil.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Or you can make it traditional too. I'll talk a little bit about the red sauce, the easy red sauce that I make, that it's great for pizzas because it's not watery. I think a lot of times when you make homemade pizzas, an issue is like you get all that water and it makes your dough soggy, or whatever you're using, it gets a little soggy. So there's a recipe I use that's based with tomato paste. So it's thick and it's delicious and it's just a concentrated tomato flavor. So you don't have to use as much and it also doesn't make things soggy. So that's great with zucchini too. All right, moving on. So shrimp burgers. I wanted to do something different using seafood because meatless doesn't necessarily always mean, you can't use shrimp or fish or something like that. So I've made these a bunch of different times. I don't think I ever make it the same though, because there's always so many things that I have on hand that I just throw in. I've made them healthy. I've made them not so healthy. I've made them sort of like a crab cake where you just use cracker crumbs and mayo and things like that. Delicious. But we're going to make it in a way that's a little bit more healthy, but also very, very, very tasty. So we're just going to add a lot of flavor to it. So you're really not going to miss the fat that you would in like a crab cake style. So with this, I like to use raw shrimp, but with this recipe I did cooked. I feel like it's easier if you just buy a bag of already done shrimp, cooked, peeled, deveined, ready to go, just to, thaw it out and throw it in. So we're gonna start out with, and this time I actually did a mix because I made these last week and I didn't want to go through 4 pounds of shrimp. So I ended up this time doing a package of imitation crab and then about a pound of shrimp. So we've got shrimp in the food processor with imitation crab. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add to that, I'll show you guys, all the beautiful shrimp. And don't feel like you have to use the beautiful huge shrimp. You don't have to. You can use the smaller shrimp. It all works out the same way. Smaller shrimp are just going to have a little bit more of an intense seafoody, shrimpy flavor. But, feel free to do that. You don't have to buy the larger shrimp. I just had this on hand. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to add some garlic. So I am using real garlic today. You can use just granulated garlic or garlic powder or whatever you have. I prefer granulated garlic and granulated onion powder or onion because it just gives a more intense flavor. Plus, I feel like the powder gets all over the place and you breathe it in, and I hate that.